For any business to be successful, they have to invest.
How did you get into business?
I was always curious.
Are there things of importance that you should have focused on then, knowing what you know today?
One thing I'll say is, every day is going to be day one for you. You're going to be learning, figuring out. You may have some failures. You may have to adjust them.
But how do you even know if the market is right?
You have to have a clear statement, a statement of, I am looking to do A, that's going to achieve B.
I say we need to fail, because now you fail, you know how to win. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us in today's episode of the Obehi podcast. I remain your host, Obehi Ewanfo. We love to talk about our story. Of course, you know how much we love our story because it touches about where we are coming from, who we are, and why would we do what we are doing. That is the fundamental truth that we want to uphold here, in that we are important. Therefore, what we do also is important. But first of all, we are somebody. So I have the honor of talking with Jourdan today. Of course, he's going to do a better job introducing himself. I'm not going to introduce him. So Jourdan, thank you so much for being here. Could you tell the people who you are?
Well, hey, thank you, and I appreciate being on your podcast. My name is Jourdan Sorrell. I've had a career that expanded not only in business, nonprofit, but now in social impact. And I help, businesses to foundations to become stronger and to build more resilient communities. So I'm very excited to be on today's podcast to have a little bit more conversation about strategic partnerships and going from there.
That's lovely. All right, Jourdan, this is where we usually start from. We want to take a moment to learn about you, because that is the basis. Now, when you look back in the past, because you are no longer a young man, you have grown now. So what do you remember of your young infancy? Of course, this is going to help us to understand where exactly you are coming from. Share something with us.
Sure. So I have born and raised originally in Chicago. I was born to my mother, who was a 35-year retired public school teacher, and my father, who was a social worker and then worked in banking before he passed when I was young, about 8 years old. I always remember the value, firstly, just education. Education was the hallmark and bedrock of everything that I did. That shaped and inspired me to be curious, to always seek and ask questions, but to learn and use what I learned for the greatest good and the greatest humanity. I also learned the value of service. So I was about 14 years old. I started to volunteer in my local youth center, doing tutoring for young children, even I was a young child myself. My mother always told me, it was a saying that the price we pay is the space we occupy on this earth, and that price is serving others. So I learned about that value, and also just learned too around the uniqueness and richness of culture and diversity. Chicago is one of the most diverse areas, I would say, not only in the city, but also in the United States. And so taking all that, being curious, I took that and just really used as my foundation as I went to my education background, University of Notre Dame, and then on in my professional career.
That's lovely. So when you look at Chicago of your time, of your infancy, you were a kind of a young man just growing up there, and look at Chicago of your time today, a full-grown man who have a huge responsibility around you because of what you do. What kind of differences do you see?
One I see is around the power of collaboration and cooperation, that we may come from different backgrounds, different experiences, etc. But the thing that makes us all unique is how we all can come together around united and shared purposes and causes. And we can do so in a way that can help strengthen communities, that can help grow individuals and make things better, whether they're social, whether they're health, economic, etc. That's one of the biggest things that I've seen growing up in Chicago. And the other thing is just around resiliency, that no matter the situations and no matter what we go through the power of people and through the power of a shared responsibility, that we can achieve anything and everything that we want to. It may take time, but that time can yield some really fruitful and productive results.
Lovely, lovely. Yeah, I love that. Because you're going to have to plant, then you will harvest. But between the time that you plant and harvest now is time. And so you are definitely going to put time in. And the sales are time. answered everything. At times, he is everything too. For some person who are maybe be wounded and say, but how am I going to get over this? Don't worry. By the time pass, you will get over that. So be hopeful. All right. Now, you made mention of service, which is sort of lean towards more of the social aspect now, but you also made mention of education, not far away from there. I understand that you're also in business. Are you doing all of them together, or are you leaning towards one angle, sort of maybe more into non-profit? Can you clarify that part for us?
I look at business and impact as one because what I've often said is that people need to see themselves in the brands that they do each and every day, whether that's the car you drive, the coffee you drink, the place you go for entertainment. In order to be able to achieve that, you have to have a strategy and a plan that shows up a community. So how do you invest in it? How do you invest your dollars? How do you invest your employees? And then how do you have your brand position so that when I'm going to the store, when I pick up the phone, etc., I know that my brand, whatever it is being responsible and able to achieve the greatest impact. So I feel good about the choice I make each and every day. And so my career has been at the intersection, I say, of where, and I've heard this one time, where profit meets purpose. And so what that's looked like is investing dollars. So doing grant dollars to nonprofits, chambers of commerce, that helps people grow their digital skills, gets them prepared for STEM careers in STEM and or small business. Because for any business to be successful, they have to invest and be intentional and focused in doing so. And so having the opportunity to leverage my background in deeply understanding the community, but also translating that into business outcomes has been very successful. It's helped Fortune 100 companies and others to really propel their brand so that people not only trust, but they'll continue to invest and do the good work that they need to help people's to solve their needs.
All right, all right. Now we see you having a lot of passion for service and also education, but this business part, how did you get into business? Was there a trajectory that sort of led you there, or did you tell us more about that?
I was always curious. Um, I'll say as early as probably about 12, 13 years old, I was always curious around how do we make things and how do things operate and work. And so I took that curiosity when I went to undergraduate University of Notre Dame, and I started to network. My godmother, her husband, he is a pretty now significant senior leader in the media and advertising industry. So I asked him, I wanted to get experiences. And so my first internship was around advertising and business development. So how do we pitch, large companies to move and do plans for their brands so that they can help elevate their brands, the brand reputation, and then ultimately people will buy, and that creates their market share. So I've always kept that curiosity, even when I was at Notre Dame. I didn't necessarily major in business, but I knew, and I told a mentor, a career coach of mine at the time, I can learn business when I go outside of the school. I really want to kind of learn the foundation of writing, team building, collaboration, understanding, analyzing data, so then I could apply that into my career going forth. And I had the opportunity too. I worked at a consumer packaged goods company. About my second job out of college, I learned the sales and operations aspects. So how do we take, at the time, cookies and crackers from one of the largest consumer packaged goods companies, and then how do we help sell it in store, and then how do we take the data to make sure that the product's at the right time and the right location. And so I was more so, to answer your question, I experimented a lot. I asked the right questions, I networked, and then I got myself to positions, whereas a consumer packaged goods company, a telecommunications company, to really understand the operations of business, how that works, but how that puts that all together so that you're helping to meet whoever your customers' needs are, and to do so with a product or service that not only is going to help meet that need, but also that they'll be able to be satisfied and to tell others to do the same.
Thank you for so much for that. Thank you. All right. If you were to say you want to go back to that time that you started to learn about business, were there something that you think maybe now that you know, then you didn't know? Are there something that you would probably have learned first, concentrate on, focus on, instead of maybe